You have accessed the podcast of OA, located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will. The podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 143 of the podcast of OA. I'm your co-host, Myron Rumsey, and I am joined by my good buddy, Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, I know there's a lot of exciting things going on in your life. How are things right now?
Actually, things are really, really great, Myron. Getting ready for the summer to be over and going to be going back to work pretty soon, so we're kind of looking forward to it. I don't mind having my summers off, but usually a couple weeks and I'm good and I'm ready to go back. You know, it's just having too much time off. There's only so much you can do, you know.
I wish I could relate to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things, though. A lot of people say, oh, you're lucky you're a teacher, you get the summers off. And while it's all good, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Unless you have a lot of money and you can travel, which if you're a teacher, you don't have a lot of money, so you can't travel that much. But
True.
No, but we have good news. So I thought I'd let everybody know on the podcast that my wife, Denise, and I are pregnant, and we're expecting a baby. And the due date is going to be January 22nd, 2020.
And we know babies are right on time, so you can.
Right.
Well, you know, congratulations, and I'm sure everybody who's listening is very, very happy for you guys.
Yeah,
I'm very excited for you.
We're looking forward to it. We're both a little scared. I had a child before, but he's actually going to be 18 this August. So 18 years later, I'm doing it all over again.
How does he feel about being a big brother?
Oh, he's looking forward to it. He's excited, and he's hoping for a little boy, but we're hoping for a girl, and that's kind of what we want. But whatever we get, you know, we're both going to be happy regardless, and we're gonna figure out what the gender is, and we're just going to keep it to ourselves and not tell anybody until the baby's born. And we already have names kind of picked out, so you know, we're just getting ready. That's all we can do.
It's exciting. It's exciting stuff.
It is. It really is, and it's a new venture for us and our relationship. And I mean, her and I are I wouldn't know what to do without her in my life, to be honest with you. And this is just going to be a great, great adventure for us to go through together. And I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. It's great. So, Green Lantern wise, there's not a whole lot of news right now. I don't know whether folks out there listened to this when it was being broadcast live on YouTube, but there is a really neat little, audio drama that was created by a fellow Green Lantern fan. And it's out on YouTube. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And I'm talking to him right now about getting him to come on the next episode and talk about Ring of Victory, which is a Rotlop fan-centric audio drama.
That's awesome. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but it's on my playlist, and I'm going to get to listen to it before. Hopefully, we have them on our episode or our podcast. So I'm going to listen to it before we get them on here.
It's really neat. Ian Harrington is his name, and Ian did a Larfleeze Christmas special motion comic a few years ago, which I love, and I like to draw people's attention to it. And this is really neat as well. It's a full length adventure done as an audio tale. There aren't really any Earth Lantern. It's alien Green Lantern characters centric, which I think is really fabulous. Just because so many times the aliens don't get the attention that they should. And Rotlop Fan is such an awesome, amazing character. So I love the fact that they made him the title character.
that is interesting. And you know, it's gonna work well with Grant Morrison's title. I mean, we've had a lot of we haven't been on Earth, you know what I mean? And a lot of it's been alien centric, and it's going to be kind of nice to go along with that.
The other thing going on outside of the fake movie news that we keep seeing popping up on the internet, we got this covered. Yeah, right. But the other thing going on that's real interesting is Guy Gardner getting his due in the Young Justice animated series. Season 3 continued recently on the DC Universe app, and the first episode had Guy Gardner as the Green Lantern in the Justice League on an adventure out in space. And needless to say, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but Guy Gardner completely stole the show.
I'm not surprised. He steals the show anytime he's on something. He's a great character.
I think this is I don't think Guy's gotten a lot of play outside of that really bad Justice League movie years and years ago. I don't think he's gotten a lot of play in other media. He did. I think he was in one of the Lego movies. I thought the character was played really well by Diedrich Bader in Green Lantern the Animated Series, and I think this one is really they captured the essence of the smart aleck guy, but still the guy who gets things done. So I love the fact that they tempered it. They didn't make him a pompous jerk. So I love that, but they made him humorous too.
Did you like him in the animated series? I thought he was pretty good in there.
Yeah, I liked him in the Green Lantern animated series. I thought it was interesting. They kept him again humorous, but they didn't go too over the top.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed him in there. I enjoyed that series anyway, and I know we've talked ad nauseum about that particular series and how we still miss it to this day.
Yeah, I still routinely, every 5 or 6 months or so, I binge watch the entire series. I can't get over it. I love it. To me, it is my favorite interpretation of Green Lantern outside of the printed page.
My favorite episode of that series was the Steam Lantern. I really got a kick out of that idea. I thought it was really, really cool.
That was really cool. And actually they were going to follow up on that in season 2, if there had been one, and we were going to see Alan Scott. That
would have been excellent. What a shame. God, what a shame that series ended. Ugh.
Hey, speaking of Alan Scott, the other thing I forgot about, and I'm glad we just started talking about Steam Lantern, because it reminded me that Alan Scott may be appearing on Stargirl.
I did. I read about that. I think that's a good idea. I mean, it's going to be a nice introduction to his character. I mean, I've always liked him anyway. He's one of my probably my top 3, top 4. And I don't think he gets a lot of credit where credit is due, but a lot of it revolves around some of the writers bringing back, these old characters, the old Legion and the old, what was that group he was a part of? What team up was he with?
JSA.
JSA, that's right. And I think a lot of writers are starting to tap into that old material and bringing that stuff back, like Thunderhawks and things like that. I was sad when the recent issue of the recent run of those time traveler guys, the New Challengers, ended. I was really, really big in the New Challengers, and I was sad to see it go, because it was nice to have those older characters that I grew up with come back. But like as well as I do, and when it comes to the comic book world, nothing lasts forever. True.
And it's funny that you bring up old characters, because we're going to be talking a lot about old characters here shortly when we dive into the Green Lantern issue number 9, because Grant Morrison really does a deep, deep dive, I tell you.
He really does. I was surprised that a lot of the older stuff was coming out. I actually had to look a few of them up, because I was like, wait a minute, I haven't seen that mentioned in a long time. But we'll get into that when we talk about it. But you're right, it's good stuff, and it's a good intro into the next arc that he's going with. I really enjoyed this last issue.
I agree. So with that said, let's take a quick pause. I'm going to play the promo for Ring of Victory for folks, and then we'll jump right back in and we'll start talking about the Green Lantern.
All right, sounds good, buddy.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
There are many tales in the Book of Bova, but have you ever heard one that's not about a Green Lantern?
In loudest din.
Captain, to all hands, load the escape pods. This is a full evacuation.
But sir, the gravity, the pods won't make it.
Or hush profound.
So, then we're doomed.
My ears catch evil's slightest sound.
Attention, Green Lanterns. You are harboring Grylar.
Let those who toll out evil's knell.
This is a crime punishable by extermination.
Beware my power, the F-sharp bell!
Green Lantern, Ring of Victory, a fan-made audio drama, premiering on YouTube, June 29th, 2019.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Here we are, Myron, issue number 9, The Green Lantern, written by Grant Morrison, art by the always beautiful Liam Sharp. And let me tell you something. I really, 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 really enjoyed this issue.
It was pretty crazy. You know, it started out with this big battle and you get introduced to the Superwatch, and you get bombarded with all these characters that I had forgotten had existed, and some of them I didn't recognize at all. And like you said earlier, you know, Google is our friend. We had to go out and look up stuff. But I love the fact that, you know, Grant Morrison is looking back at the old stuff and bringing it forward, and Liam Sharp kind of reinterprets the costumes in such a way that you're led to believe that, you know, all these years we haven't read about them, they still have had adventures, and, you know, here they formed a super team called the Superwatch, and here they are being completely annihilated by the Quaman.
You know, it just kind of makes you wonder if you're in Grant Morrison's shoes. You know, like, you know, he went back and he did all his research into these old characters and this old Silver Age stuff, and, you know, it just kind of makes you wonder how much stuff he read to have the ability to bring these characters forward, like you said. You know.
Well, yeah, I imagine like he walked down the halls of the DC archives and just grabbed random issues. Said, I'm going to use this guy and that guy. And cause it's from all over the place. Even the planets, you know, the planets that were used, Hal's vacation planet, what was it pronounced? Athmura goes all the way back to Green Lantern number 16 from 1962. And Cranaltine, the home of the Superwatch, goes back to a Paul Levitt, Steve Ditko story back in Adventure Comics. It's crazy.
It really is. And I'm kind of wondering, you know, I asked myself a question after I got done reading this issue of why Hal Jordan evolved, why he chose that to be his vacation planet.
You know, it's interesting to me because, you know, if you go back to when this series was going to start and they were interviewing Grant Morrison and he was talking about his take on Hal Jordan, one of the comments he made was that, you know, Hal has a hard time coming back to his own planet because think of all the things he's experienced out there, and then you come back to Earth. And
right. It's kind of a mundane lifestyle.
Right. So when you see him, you know, going for a little R&R in a very Tolkien Dungeons and Dragons live action role play, only it really isn't role play, you can understand why, like, you know, if I was going to go to R&R, would I go to Hawaii or would I go fight dragons? You know,
right.
I'd probably go fight dragons too.
And what'd you think of his costume? What'd you think of his outfit?
I thought it was really cool. I loved it. I was feeling a little bit of a Frank Frazetta vibe.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Good point.
You know, and they're fighting this character. I'm going to look it up to make sure I pronounce it right. Abba Nazar.
Abba Nazar,
yeah. Which turns out to be Abin Sur from Earth 20. It just, you know, crazy stuff. You know, he's bringing multiversity into it, and
that's his baby. You know, that's Morrison's baby, man. He doesn't ever leave it alone. It doesn't matter what your reading of it is, but he always taps into that multiverse concept. And, you know, I think DC's really, really big into that theme these days.
Yeah, I think, you know, they're really kind of playing off of some of that stuff. They just announced today that there's going to be a Tales of the Dark Multiverse, you know, riff on the whole Metal series where we saw that Dark Multiverse, and they're doing a retelling of classic DC stories, but versions of them that take place in the Dark Multiverse, and they're actually doing a Blackest Night.
Yeah, I saw you posted that. There was another one about the death of Superman that looked really, really, really cool too. I saw the cover for that.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't released any information about the Blackest Night part yet, so I'm waiting to see what they do. I hope it isn't done with Dawnbreaker, because I really don't want to see that. But I would like to see something really interesting.
And I wonder if Hal Jordan would be the main character then.
Yeah, I don't know. I was kidding on Twitter earlier. One of the followers on Twitter was like, you know, hey, I'm not really interested in all this much per se, but wouldn't it be interesting if it's a dark multiverse? It's already a dark event. Would this make it a lighter event? And I said, well, you know, and I forgot to tag Tom King in it, but you know, Tom King did that really neat Elmer Fudd Batman story a year or so ago, and he did a really neat Hal Jordan story, and I thought, geez, well, maybe he would do the Looney Tunes version of Blackest Night. There was a DeviantArt page where Porky Pig was Necron, and it was called Blackest Night, and it had all the Warner Brothers cartoon characters as different parts of the emotional spectrum. And I thought, I would pay money for that.
I'd get into that. That'd be kind of cool. I've always been a big fan of when it wasn't Donald. Yeah, it was Daffy Duck. That was where I've always seen Daffy Duck in the Green Lantern outfit.
Oh yeah. But Daffy is the Green Lantern from his cartoon.
Right.
But this whole thing with Abba Nazar, there was a couple of things there that I thought was really interesting, and one of them was the logo on the medallion. Hal cuts the medallion that's controlling Abin Sur. Like, how did this happen? How did he get under some kind of mind control? But the logo that's on it reminded me of the Black Star / Dark Star logo.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that, but you're right. Now that I'm looking at it, that's a good point. Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know whether this ties back to Controller Mu and that whole story. I don't know if that's tied into it or not. And the other thing is that Abin Sur says that this being is looking for Hal. Why is he looking for Hal? So I'm really interested in seeing it, what happens. And the only thing that struck me odd as I was rereading it the other day was this whole name, the Qua Man. And when you saw that this was a riff on Abin Sur's name, is the Qua Man a multiverse version of Aquaman?
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it would be cool.
What did you think about the? I thought his ring was talking to him a little bit more than usual this issue. It seemed like he had a banter with the ring.
Yeah, he had a lot of banter with the ring because they were having problems. His ring wasn't working as well, and there was a little bit more banter. You kind of wonder if after the events of recent issues where Hal spent the entire issue inside of his ring, if maybe that dynamic between Hal and his ring have been changed a little bit.
I mean, it kind of made it feel like that. It actually felt like the ring had a personality itself this issue, and I don't think I've ever really picked up on that before. Especially when it says it hates me. Yeah. It's like, okay, you're not really a sentient being to know that something's hating you or not, but you're picking up on that through a ring, which with the emotional spectrum, I can. That's kind of obvious. It would do that, but it didn't seem like the ring has ever made a commentary like that before.
Yeah, it didn't seem to have that much of a personality.
Sure.
The other thing that I thought was really cool was when Abin Sur called for help from the Guardians of the Multiverse, and he used the term SOS, which sounds very antiquated, but when you look at Green Lantern history, the title of the story in Showcase number 22 was SOS Green Lantern. So I thought that was, I'm assuming that's intentional because I don't think Grant Morrison does anything unintentionally, but I just thought that was a neat little callback.
Well, and like you said, I mean, a lot of these writers, they put those things in there to pay homage to some of the prior stuff, and especially when you're doing so with a Green Lantern character, which, I mean, you and I both know that Green Lantern recently has been thrown on the back burner, except this issue, which continually goes on and on and on. But it seems like the Green Lantern character itself has been getting the brunt of jokes lately. I mean, you've seen both the Lego movies, I'm sure, and you've seen some of the banter that's been thrown around Green Lantern. And it seems like everything's been pushed off of Aquaman and thrown on Hal Jordan's shoulders for some reason.
Yeah, he's been kind of a bit of the fall guy, and it's getting a little bit overkill.
It really is. So it's really cool that a lot of these writers, Grant Morrison included, bring stuff back from the past, like we've talked about with these older characters and bringing them forward and stuff, and especially paying homage to the original content, like you were talking about the SOS, and then this whole interplay with Abin Sur, if you want to call him that, from a different multiverse. It's kind of nice to see him around again. And that pulls on an emotional spring with Hal Jordan because, obviously, as everybody knows, he was given the ring by Abin Sur before he died. And there was a connection between those two characters, if anybody's, read some of the original content or whatnot.
Well, absolutely. And I think, I kind of hope that Abin Sur sticks around a little bit because Hal's never been able to really have that relationship with Abin Sur. I mean, obviously, he's connected to Abin Sur, and this is a different version of him, but he's not so different that Hal couldn't have a very mentor-mentee relationship with Abin Sur. I mean, sure, Hal's gone beyond the need for a mentor, but, we all look up to people. and I think it'd be kind of neat for Hal to have that kind of a relationship.
And it would be unique, because it's coming from a different take on the characters. Even Hal Jordan himself, as we've read for 9 issues now, it's a different take on Hal Jordan entirely that we've seen before. So it's not unconventional for a writer to tap into a different resonance with their characterizations and interplaying back and forth with one another and have a totally different narrative behind it, moving forward with these two, basically meeting for the first time again when it's a new characterization for them both.
Yeah, I agree. And what did you think about the 3 Green Lanterns that show up from the Guardians of the Multiverse at the end of the issue?
Well, I was a little confused. I'm not entirely sure who the guy is. The turn on, tune in, drop out. Do you know who that is?
Yep, that is the Green Lantern of Earth 47, and that's kind of a very psychedelic hippie-ish Earth, and he's the Green Lantern of that Earth.
I gotcha. Okay.
The Flash there was called Speed Freak. Batman was called the Dark Knight. He was known as Shooting Star.
Okay, I was curious. He didn't click with me. I mean, I've seen the Batman before, and then that other Hal Jordan or Green Lantern, whoever it is. But that guy didn't click with me at first. But it's not surprising that he's the odd man out, and Grant Morrison decided to put that kind of character in there.
I'd love to have a T-shirt like that. Now, do you remember Brother Power the Geek?
I don't. No, I do not.
He was a very odd character from back in the day, and this is the Earth that he is now from.
I gotcha. Okay.
But the Superman is Sunshine Superman. It's a whole riff on late 60s culture. A lot of flower power and so on.
It's this whole multiverse stuff, and it's really kind of neat to see it in the Green Lantern title. I enjoy reading about it before. I know you had said that you kind of read Grant Morrison's Multiversity when it came out, and it was kind of touch and go with a lot of people, I think. And there's some characters I remember from it when it came out. There's some that are kind of forgettable, to be honest with you. But it's really neat to see Morrison, using it and utilizing it such in these Green Lantern books.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Grant Morrison, I think we have to get over the notion of having these quick read books, because his books are just, they're decompressed, and there's a lot of stuff thrown in there, and there isn't necessarily a lot of explanation. So he's challenging the reader really to rise up to his writing. And some people like it and will do it gladly, and some people it's a big turnoff, and I completely get that.
Well, and it's like you said, I mean, for each turning page, you have to run a Google to figure out, okay, well, there must be some kind of connection or some kind of thread here that he's pulling out of the past. And more often than not, just about everything that you pull out, I mean, from his pages, we've heard about these characters before, like the United Nation of Planets or whatever it's called, United Planets, and their home base on Throne World, and like you had said earlier, the whole Throne World thing is. That's the birthplace of Starman. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Right.
And to pull it forward, you mentioned that Paul Levitz and Steve Ditko were part of the creation of those particular characters and those particular planets. And it's really, really, I don't know. It just, like I said, it goes back to this whole homage that he pays to other writers and stuff, and probably people that has an impact on his writing and his writing moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I like about the fact that it's part of this series is that I think if you look back over DC history, Green Lantern has really been kind of the spine of the DC cosmic universe. I would say Green Lantern and Superman are probably the 2 books who did the most to really bring a lot of sci-fi, cosmic, other aliens and planets and stuff, really brought them forward outside of some individual series here and there. So I'm really glad to see that Grant Morrison is doing that in this book, rather than throw it into something else.
Do you think Grant's leading this into like a bigger spectrum as far as and I always went back to this before, and I mentioned this on other podcasts, like a Guardians of the Galaxy type of team up with the Green Lantern Corps and this whole multiverse concept? Do you think he's trying to to pull that thread in to the DC universe to get people to understand that Green Lantern, while he is part of the main DCU, he's still an offshoot of the DCU because he's kind of on the fringes, you know, well, much like Wonder Woman is when she visits the Mascara, which is kind of on the fringe of the DCU, but she still integrates in her own title and when she's in Justice League or whatnot. But I mean, Hal Jordan himself isn't included in any of the big titles. You know, he's not in Justice League, he's not in Justice League Dark, he's not in Odyssey or whatnot. But he's kind of on the fringes by himself. And I kind of get the feeling, and I kind of hope that's what Grant Morrison is trying to do, is to kind of integrate a whole Green Lantern Corps concept outside of the DC universe that has some kind of connection to it, but it's still a story in itself.
It could be. I mean, there's a certain freedom you have when you're not tied to what's going on in the on Earth in the DCU. You know, you've got all kinds of creative freedom there. You know, from what I know about this run, is it's only going to be 24 issues.
So that's where they're capping off at. It's 24.
Yeah. Liam Sharp was saying that, you know, he's doing all 24 issues except for a couple where he's taking a break, but there's going to be a season 2 and that will be the end of it essentially. And Grant Morrison has said that this is his last mainstream comic he's going to do.
That's interesting. And that kind of makes you wonder who's going to pick up where they leave off. And I hope it's going to lead into another book. I mean, certainly they wouldn't leave Hal Jordan on the wayside. And I don't think they would just not do anything with this character moving forward.
Yeah. You know, I think if there's any concern, it's about what comes next. I'm enjoying the ride right now, and I'm enjoying each issue, and I'm finding things in it I really enjoy. But I'm also concerned, much like I was when Jeff Johns left this series, about what's going to happen next. What's DC going to do? I grew to respect Robert Venditti's writing, and more so in particular in the Rebirth era stuff when he was given a lot more creative freedom than he was during New 52. But I always wondered, boy, you know, if I was DC, would I bring in somebody who doesn't really have a track record? You know, what would I bring in a big name creator? And DC chose not to. And I think in some ways that hurt the title because they were looking to see what's going to be next. And then that first story arc turned a lot of people, myself included, off a little bit with the whole Lights Out thing. So, you know, I wonder what's going to happen after Morrison moves on. And we're still, you know, a good year and a quarter away from that happening. But where's it going to leave the Green Lantern franchise when you're done? Because right now there's nothing but the one book. And is Dan Didio and are Dan Didio and Jim Lee committed to this franchise and doing something with it? I don't know. You know, I'd like to think so, but at the same time, you know, as you said, we don't see Hal doing much of anything else outside of his book. You know, there's a couple things here and there he's shown up in, but not a lot. And John Stewart's been, you know, pretty much relegated to being on the pages of the Justice League, which is that's certainly not a consolation prize, but it doesn't give as much focus to him as being in the Green Lantern Corps book does. And you've got Jessica Cruz over in Justice League Odyssey, which is really kind of struggling to keep an audience.
Yeah, I kind of been dropping off that title recently myself. I don't know. I don't feel like they're writing her character like. They're not writing it in the way that I fell in love with her to begin with. So, I mean, you know, if that makes sense. And I'm sure if anybody reads Jessica Cruz would probably understand that. But they're doing her a disservice when they threw her in kind of like a sum of the total of Odyssey. And while she is a primary character in the book, I just don't think the writers get her when they're writing her in that book.
Yeah, she's really not a character that stands up in a team book. To be honest.
No, she did good with, I hate to say it. She did really, really good in the title of Simon Baz. And, you know, and even I'll say this, I may not like Simon Baz, but sadly, I don't like to see any kind of character just thrown wayside just because. And I'm still kind of disappointed that he hasn't turned up anywhere or hasn't been mentioned of him, or they haven't even bothered to throw him in something or give some kind of reference to him at this point.
You really wanted him to show up in Heroes in Crisis in the field, didn't you?
Something, even something. I mean, give me some kind of, I don't know. I mean, nobody likes when characters are just dropped, and you know, I mean, we've been there before. I mean, you and I have read enough comics between us to know that you hate seeing characters go, and there's some that you don't mind seeing go. But when it comes to the Green Lantern universe, like him or not, I mean, he's still a part of that Green Lantern lore, and there's a thread there that's been cut that you just want to follow it all the way to find out, okay, what happened here? Come on, I mean, give me something with this guy. At least give the fans something, because he does have a fan base. Don't get me wrong. I may not be a part of it, but at least some fans out there would like to know, okay, what the hell here? I mean, you just write a character off, and then all of a sudden you don't give us any explanation about where this person has gone. And that's the one thing that really bothers me about the comic book industry, and it happens a lot.
I think when you look at how much, Green Lantern right around 2009 hit a fever pitch, and it could support, I think we were at 5 series at that point. But
right.
You knew at some point that was going to die down. And the problem with keeping so many Earth Lanterns and adding more to it is that when that bell curve drops, somebody's going to get short-handed. And you've built expectations up of your audience that, for every, you and I kid around about Simon Baz, and neither one of us are particularly fond of the character, but the reality is for some people, that's their favorite Green Lantern. And they're getting the short end of the stick because DC can't find a way to sustain interest in that many characters at once. And that's the danger of adding more rather than making the most of less.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And our generation, I mean, I won't say our generation, but there's a generation of fans out there that feel the same way about Kyle Rayner. And there's a generation of fans out there that feel the same way about John Stewart, because that's the Green Lantern that was embedded in the time frame that those people grew up upon. And Simon Baz probably attracted a lot of readers much the same way Hal Jordan did with us, or Jessica Cruz did with others and everything. And then just, I don't know, just to throw him wayside, it's kind of sad. It's really disappointing. I wish I was going to San Diego Comic-Con so I could find out, but whatever.
So the Guardians of the Multiverse is really an interesting concept, because if you think about the Guardians of the Universe, they're not so much an active group. They're just our little favorite blue midgets. But here we've got Green Lanterns from all over the multiverse that are aware of each other and are acting in unison. You've got, as we talked about, Magic Lantern from Earth 47, we've got Bat Lantern from Earth 32, and we've got Flashlight from Earth 36.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing how this all interacts, because I don't think Hal has had interactions with any of these guys. So I think it's going to be really kind of interesting.
It really is. And it's really going to be a cool interplay, and I don't know. I'm excited for this series. I mean, I feel like this kind of kicked off a whole nother level. I mean, especially when that opening page, when you saw all that battle going on, it's like, okay, this really started off strong. That first panel was just spot on. And go Liam Sharp. Liam Sharp that guy nails it every time, man.
I'll be honest. I didn't see the preview, the sneak peek that was on. So to be honest, opened the book up, saw that page, and I thought, am I reading the right book? Because this doesn't look like a Green Lantern book. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go with it because it's Grant Morrison. And, I think it's interesting because he catches you off guard a little bit. Even when you jump to see Hal on his R&R, you don't really, it's him, but it's like, oh, what's going on?
Right.
He doesn't give you the typical pretenses of, we're going to have narrator boxes that are going to explain everything to you.
Right. Exactly.
He says, here's what's going on. Catch up.
Yep. And it's kind of comedic in a way, because when I first saw Hal and he was in, Sure Hal, and then he's talking to those other creatures or whatnot. And it's kind of like this whole interplay. It's like, okay, so you're on another planet where you're vacationing, and then you got, then you're being called Sir Hal. And then you got these other creatures in there, this purple guy with the horns, and then the female character. It's like, okay, where did you run into those two at? Were you guys having coffee before you guys met up, or what's going on here? And it kind of made me snicker. And then it's really cool because all these planets are in Sector 2814, which happens to be the sector that Hal patrols.
I thought maybe that Grant Morrison was bringing the Primal Age, the action figures that are out there.
Oh, right.
the He-Man versions of the DC Universe. I thought, well, maybe this is his take on Green Lantern from a different universe. Maybe this isn't our Hal. 'Cause it kind of left you up in the air a little bit.
And you know what? That could be a possibility still. You would, and of course, you'd never know because, I mean, he's written so differently that you're under the impression, okay, well, this is just Hal Jordan, and I'm just going to go with it. But who knows if Grant Morrison's going to pull that card? Maybe this isn't the Hal Jordan that we know. Maybe this is a Hal Jordan from a different multiverse.
It's possible. Abin Sur seems to think it's Hal from Earth Zero, but
right.
It could be a swerve.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. With Grant Morrison, you never know what you're going to get. Like you and I have talked about many times before in the past.
Yeah. To me, it goes back to, one of the things that we saw in an upcoming issue is a redesign of Star Sapphire. And to me, this cements to me that Star Sapphire is not our Carol.
You don't think so?
No.
If it's not, it's not. I still really, really, really like the new characterization of her. I think it looks really cool.
I think it could be very interesting to see their reactions when he interacts with her, because if it is Carol from a different universe, he doesn't know what the history that universe's Hal has with her, if he has any at all.
Right. And it could rehash a different kind of, like you said, or like we talked about with Abin Sur, it could redo a whole different level of interpolation between the two characters because, he's been so far apart from her for so long now, reestablishing a connection with a character that isn't the character that you remember, and a whole different, entirely new Carol Ferris that you're unaccustomed with, much the same like you did with Abin Sur this issue.
Boy, wouldn't it be, I can really see the potential comedically of our Carol bumping into Hal and this Carol.
Having them all on the main page. That'd be kind of fun.
That could be really interesting. But this issue, I thought it was great. And I love the variant cover. I don't know if you picked that one up, but it's got Hal on the cover making these different creatures, these different cats, different jungle cats on the cover of the book.
The side view. It's got the side view of them.
Yeah, I thought that was really, really creative.
Yeah, it's a cool cover. I've been doing a lot of the variant covers recently because they're just. I picked up all the. I was a big Tyler Kirkham fan, so I picked up all the Tyler Kirkham variants that he came out with on the Venditti run. But I've been doing a lot of the variants on this Grant Morrison run because there's a lot of different artists that are coming on and doing these, and they're really, 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 really. They do it a great service.
The other thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to an article from a website called Adventures in Poor Taste, because they did a really good breakdown of who's who in Superwatch. And it was funny because I didn't do my review until just a couple days ago, in part because I was researching all the characters. And as I was doing my research, I came across the article. I'm like, well, geez, there's no sense me doing this. Somebody else has already done a much better job than I could have. So I'm going to put a link to that, but it's really cool to see all the different books and all the characters that Grant Morrison pulled in. He even pulled in, there's a new version of Maxima. I don't know if you remember Maxima from
Sure do.
Back in Action Comics. And I think she was even in Justice League for a while. Very different look to her, but interesting to see.
She used to have a thing for, she used to have a lot of interplay with Superboy.
Oh yeah. And there's their article. There's I think 3 characters they couldn't figure out who they were. But
you said that's Adventures in Poor Taste. I think I came across that same article.
Yep, it's Adventures in Poor Taste. The article was called "A New DC Cosmic Team Arrives in the Green Lantern #9, but who are they?" And they did a fantastic job of doing all the detective work. And like I said, I was in the process of doing it, and that was part of the reason why I didn't get my review done in a timely basis. I don't get review copies in advance like a lot of websites do. I buy my copies just like everybody else does. So I was trying to dig through history, and I recognized some of them, but not all of them. And I was like, oh, I need to find out who some of these people are and fill in the blanks. And then as I got going, as I said, I came across their article, and I'm like, well, I no sense me doing it. Somebody else has already done all that legwork. So like I said, I just did my review this week, but I love the issue, and I love Liam Sharp's pages. I think that, the word, if I were to choose a word to describe Liam Sharp's artwork in this issue, it'd be the word lush. Because I think everything, the landscapes and everything just looks so lush. And it's interesting to see, the juxtaposition of the Superwatch out in space and the sci-fi thing, and you turn the page and here you are in Sword and Sorcery Land. Yeah, and it's really cool showing them all sitting together when they're in that meeting room or whatnot surrounding the planet that they're looking at. Yeah. I thought it was neat. Yeah, seeing them all on that same page. It was really neat. Seeing Hal ride the dragon, too. Right. And it's really, it makes me want to look into these other characters to see what kind of adventures they had before. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's the magic of Morrison. I think is that he pulls the stuff from the past and treats it it's important enough to want to revisit, and then it piques your curiosity. You're like, gosh, I got to go back and read these things because I remember either hearing about this ancillary character or reading about it, or maybe I've never heard of the character, but the look is interesting enough to make me want to find out more. Right, exactly, and that's the beauty of Morrison. I mean, and he does the fans a good service when he does those kind of things, and it only attracts new readers, because how many readers have been disassociated with even just this group of Superwatch that either never has heard from him or, like you and I, hasn't heard from him in such a long time, and then they go back. Go ahead. Yeah, and then they go back and they revisit these old issues again. Yeah, and I don't think they ever existed as a team before. I just think he pulled a lot of random elements together. And, here's what you come up with kind of thing. But, it's interesting when you look at this book, if you look at the sales charts, I think the most recent ones that are out there right now are June. If you pull out the Batman books and the event books, I think the Green Lantern is doing the best amongst DC's books. So it's outselling Aquaman and Wonder Woman and everybody else right now. Well, I mean, of course, I think I've mentioned this on Twitter the other day, and anybody who follows me knows that I'm not a huge Batman fan, but it's like, that's all you see is Batman books these days, and to see to see Green Lantern even keep up with that particular title is enough in itself, to know that it's going to, at least it'll probably stay around for a while. Yeah. But a great issue. If you haven't read it yet, you're late to the game, but definitely you want to read it because it's a good book. Oh yeah, I definitely get caught up on this because this is really going to amp up moving forward because you never know what's going to you never know what's going to come, and that's the beauty of Morrison. It's you never know what you're going to get from one issue to the next, and I like the surprises, and I like talking to you about it because I know you have a lot of back history with some of this older stuff, and I do too. But it's fun us going off one another, and we notice these old things, and it's like, oh yeah, that just brings back that old nostalgic feeling, and that's really, really good, and that feels nice. Well, in a day and age where comics are $4 a pop, I for one appreciate the fact that this isn't a 10-minute flip through and I'm done. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's not a quick read, and I encourage other readers, much like myself, to go through it a couple times and really, really get a feel for it a second time through. Because I guarantee you, the second time you read it, you pick up on other things that you didn't know were there. Right. And I think the book will read better, even better in trade, because you'll have it all together. I have not picked up the first hardcover for the series yet, but I'm interested in reading it in that format just to see if those early issues pull together as a bigger story better. Yeah, I think I might do the same myself when it does come out in the trade, just to see if I do grasp it a lot. I don't know if I will though, because I know I found myself like this one here. I read 3 times because there was so. I mean, with Liam Sharp's art, there's so much going on in the background. There's so much going on in the foreground that I wanted to make sure that I took it all in, and to read it 3 times, it's like, yeah, I got to make sure I get all of this in before we start talking about it because there's just so much happening. And anybody that knows Liam Sharp's artwork knows that that's what he does. Same thing with the Brave and the Bold when he came out with that issue a while back. It's just he really, 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 really takes that art to a whole new level. Agreed. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. It's either going to be you and I doing another retro review type of an episode, or we're going to have Ian Harrington on to talk about Ring of Victory, depending if we can get our timing worked out with him.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd love to talk to the guy. Like I said, I'm gonna listen to that probably in the next couple of days because I still have some time on my hands until I go back to work, and that way I can get. You said you listened to it already. What'd you think of it?
I really enjoyed it. He did a neat thing where they streamed it live, so it was almost like a launch party kind of thing, and a couple of the voice actors were on in the live chat, so you could kind of chit chat while you were listening to it. I really had a good time with it. I like anything that's done with a semblance of production value that shows like there's some forethought put into it. It isn't your traditional fan fiction where somebody's a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu and saves the day. I enjoyed it. To me, it was a very relatable tale. It added a lot of layers to Rotlob Fan that I don't think has necessarily been explored. And I think that's, again, the luxury you have when you use a character that isn't as widely known because you have some creative freedom. So I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't listened to it yet, I highly encourage you to listen to it. In fact, if folks out there, if the people that are listening to this episode listen to Ring of Victory and have questions, shoot me an email, mrumsey@blogofOA.com, or send me a question on Twitter, DM me there or on the Facebook group or something. Any questions you might want to ask, this is your chance to participate in a conversation. So
yeah, and it'd be really cool because if we get him on the show, he'd be able to answer some of the questions that we won't have, that we won't have the answer for,
Right. So we should be back in a couple of weeks. Until then, everybody keep cool if you're enjoying the throes of summer, and keep your power ring charged, treat each other well, and as always, make every day your brightest day.
And we'll hear from you soon.
The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the Blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.